Is it's a registered charity dedicated to informing and implementing healthy decisions for better public health. And we've got a scientific advisory board of various general practitioners, as well as cardiologists, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists as well, and also a registered dietitian in the form of Trudy Deacon there as well. So we've got a pretty well-established scientific advisory board behind us. Now, where did all of this start? This started with me when I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at the European Institute of Fitness back in 2010, when I qualified as a master personal trainer. And from there, I moved to London and moved in the box room of my brother in central London for about 50 quid a week, which is absolutely fantastic for central London. But from there, I went to set up my fitness boot camps called Smash the Fat. You might have come across the YouTube channel before, because as part of the fitness boot camps, I also ran a YouTube channel, which was fairly successful. All of the videos are still up there. I haven't updated it since 2015, but it's all still relevant stuff if you fancy having a look. And also at the same time, I had a podcast that was fairly popular, and I haven't checked the downloads in many a year, since 2015, in fact. But we had over 1 million downloads up until 2015. So God knows where it is these days. But yeah, it was fairly popular. But one of the most popular things that I did in relation to Smash the Fat was my overfeeding self experiments, where I overfed myself food for 21 days. Now, this is the first experiment that I did, and I'll go through those experiments kind of one by one. As you can see there, not much changed in terms of kind of my superficial bodily appearance. And the reason for that, for the most part, was because it was generally a low carb real food diet. And as I mentioned before, I did these overfeeding experiments where I ate 3 different diets, these 3 different diets here, trying to see what would happen if I ate twice the amount that I usually do. So starting off with this first experiment, as I said, it was a low carb real food diet that I was eating, and over those 21 days, when you took into account the exercise that I was doing, the protein thermogenic effect, so kind of the extra calories that you burn from eating protein, and also the loss of fiber, kind of in the form of nuts and green leafy vegetables and the avocados there as well. Over those 21 days, I ended up in a 47,000 calorie surplus, which, according to the calorie formula, meant I should have been in I should have gained 6.1 kilograms. And as you kind of saw from the photos before, I certainly didn't look as though I gained almost a stone. In actual fact, I only put on 1.3 kilograms. And in actual fact, I lost 3 centimeters from my waist as well. So if anything, potentially I gained some muscle and lost some fat, eating twice the amount as I usually do. And that's a very interesting observation in itself. But I wanted to kind of see what would happen if I ate different types of foods at the same amount of calories. And so this second experiment was, as you can see there, a low-fat fake food diet. Lots of the usual suspects there: the skim milk, the all bran, the fat-free yogurt, the crisps, the bread. You got your mini pizzas there as well, 50% fat-free garlic bread, and I think that's a low-fat lasagna as well. But over those 21 days, again, accounting for any exercise I was doing, that protein thermogenic effect, and also any fiber that I was eating, I ended up once again in a 47,000 calorie surplus, which should have meant that I should have put on 6.1 kilograms over those 21 days. But the reality was that I put on 7.1 kilograms, so a kilogram over the actual calorie formula, and I actually put on 9.25 centimeters on my waist. And for a guy that's relatively slim and naturally slim all my life, that was quite a shock to end up with that amount of weight gain in just a matter of 3 weeks. And so again, a very interesting observation, but I wanted to kind of dive down into it even further and see if it's, you know, anything to do with kind of, you know, carbohydrate content as well. And so I did this third experiment where I went back to real foods, but it was very low fat and it was even vegan as well. And just so you know, there's a 3-month washout period in between these 3 experiments as well. So it's not like I was doing them back to back. I always kind of, you know, had a 3-month washout where I tried to kind of biochemically reset as well. And so as you can see there, lots of kind of starch and sugar in the form of the fruits, and some tofu there as well. And you can see there kind of on the right, a little bowl of olive oil. That was basically, and the nuts as well, but that was basically all of the fat that I was having. It was very low fat, and I was quite kind of, frazzled by the end. But over those 3 weeks, what was interesting, because of the amount of fiber that I was eating, I only ended up in a 40,000 calorie surplus, and that's because I was eating about 5 or 6 times the usual amount of fiber that you're kind of recommended to eat. So, you know, my wife very much disliked me during those 3 weeks. But anyway, the 40,000 calorie surplus should have put me in a 5.2 kilogram weight gain. And the reality was that I put on 4.7 kilos. So not quite the calorie formula, but the closest yet. Or not the closest. Yeah, it is the closest. It's half a kilo. And so on my waist, I also put on 7.75 centimeters on my waist as well. So kind of looking at that, and this is about 2013, 2014 that I did these, I could clearly see that there's definitely kind of a theme going on here, that, you know, the low carb real food diet didn't make me put on any weight whatsoever. The low fat fake food was kind of like the worst offender in terms of weight gain. But then, you know, the very low fat vegan high carb diet wasn't particularly good for me either in terms of weight gain, along with everything else that kind of happened during that experiment as well. And so this kind of really leaned into showing and demonstrating that there's something behind the hormonal obesity theory, basically. And it was about the end of 2015 where I was in a bit of a philosophical quandary. We'd helped hundreds and thousands of people through Smash the Fat, the fitness and fat loss boot camps I was running at the time. But I always felt as though we're always going to be battling uphill in regards to trying to turn the tide on all of this, because, you know, people are just going to be going back to their GPs and other healthcare professionals to talk about nutrition, and they'd always be just given the usual low fat, healthy, whole grain nutrition advice. And so I decided that the only way that we're going to sort this out properly is by setting up a charity. And we did this on an online crowdfunding campaign in March. It was actually ran through February 2016, and we managed to double our target, which is an absolutely fantastic starting point to set up the public health collaboration. And since March 2016, I closed down the fitness boot camps and have fully focused on this ever since. Now, most of you will recognise the Eat Well guide is the reason that we're doing what we're doing, really, because although on the surface for a lot of people this can seem like it's generally healthy, is sound healthy eating guidance, there's quite a few issues with it, which I'll kind of get into a little bit later. But one thing that really stands out and that a lot of people don't know is who actually authored this. And the main authors of this are the following. So Alison Nelson from the British Dietetic Association, whose members include Abbott Nutrition, Belvita and Denon. Then there's Karen Tonks from the Institute of Grocery Distribution, whose members include Kellogg's, Mars and PepsiCo. There's Judy Buttress from British Nutrition Foundation, whose members include British Sugar, Coca-Cola, Heinz, Kellogg's, McDonald's, Mars, Nestle and PepsiCo. Then there's Andrea Martinez and Chastity from the British Retail Consortium, whose members include Burger King, Greggs, KFC, Subway. Katie Halliwell from the Food and Drink Federation, whose members include Association of Cereal Food Manufacturers, British Sugar, Cadbury, Coca-Cola, Denon, Haribo. That's probably one of my favourite ones out of all of these, and Kellogg's. Then there's James Lohman from the Association of Convenience Stores, whose members include Best One, Londis, Nisso and Spar. And then there's the minority of authors who don't have conflicts of interest. Lisa Jackson from the Association for Nutrition, Moni Matsuama from the UK Health Forum, Helen Donovan from Royal College of Nursing, Esther Trenchard Mabray, who's the Associate Director of Public Health at Tower Hamlets, and then Maureen Strong from the Agriculture and Horticultural Development Board as well. And when you actually dig down into a lot of this, what's really interesting is that the first 6 attended all of the meetings, and then the last 5 who don't have the conflicts of interest don't really attend the meetings, and that's all on the minutes on the government website, and that was all kind of dug up by the fantastic Dr. Zoe Harkham, who's kind of laid all of this out in terms of the conflicts of interest in the authoring of the Eat Well guide, which is rather scary. Now, despite their best efforts with trying to create the best healthy eating guidelines possible, adult obesity is at 27%. Childhood obesity is at 12 to 25%, depending on the age range. Then pre-diabetes is at 35%. Type 2 diabetes is currently at 6%, but obviously you've got that those with pre-diabetes as well, which is kind of, type 2 diabetes waiting in the wings. So very scary figures there. And currently, type 2 diabetes and obesity cost the NHS £16 billion per year. But as things get worse and worse, and that 35% end up going into the 6%, it's going to be absolutely astronomical. The cost to the NHS, not just in terms of financially, but in terms of time and resources as well. So yeah, not ideal. But what's really interesting is that we've actually, as the UK population, we've actually been eating very, very closely to the recommended dietary intakes that they've been suggesting. So the recommended was 50% carbohydrates, and we've been eating 48.5%. And the recommended amount of fat is no more than 35%, and we've been eating 34.2%. So in terms of carbs and fats, we've been hitting the nail right on the head in terms of their recommendations. And then you look at the fruit and veg intake. The recommended, of course, is 5. The actual, we've been eating 4, so just shy of 1. And then there's red meat intake, where the recommended is no more than 70 grams a day, and we've been eating as a population 66 grams per day. And then when you look at the calories as well, women's calories recommended 1,940. Actual is 1,595 calories. So we've actually been eating lower. And the same with the men's, 2,550 for the recommended, and the actual is 2,107. Now, with the calorie intakes, with the types of studies that they do, you've always got to account for about a 25% underreporting. But when you add that 25% back in, it's actually the recommended amounts. So in actual fact, we've been eating the right amount of carbs, the right amounts of fat, almost the right amount of fruit and veg intake, certainly the right amount of red meat, and we've been eating the right amount of calories. Yet we've got these dire public health statistics in terms of obesity and type 2 diabetes as well. So in terms of how we've been trying to create the change, in May 2016, we wrote this report, Healthy Eating Guidelines and Weight Loss Advice for the UK, which is freely available on our website. And in that, we laid out our three major concerns with current healthy eating guidelines, that being the Eat Well Guide, which is the avoidance of foods because of saturated fat content, the dietary reference value of no more than 35% total fat, and then finally the quality and quantity of carbohydrates as well. And we go into great detail within the report itself, and feel free to download and share it as well. But we didn't just want to critique the current recommendations, we also wanted to provide what we thought was a more sound approach. And this is what we came up with in terms of healthy eating guidelines. And it's important to kind of state that this is for people that are currently maintaining personal good health. So this isn't for everybody. So if you're looking to perhaps lose weight or better manage your type 2 diabetes, then this isn't necessarily good for you. This is just for kind of, people that are actually maintaining personal good health at this point. And what we're trying to focus on here is, for the most part, real food, eat real food, avoid fake food, be active every day. And even though obviously we're including the likes of rice and potato as real foods as they are, but we're trying to point people more towards the lower carbohydrate density to better control their blood glucose, regardless of how healthy they are. Now, as I mentioned, we separate healthy eating guidelines to weight loss advice, quite different. And this is our real food lifestyle for weight loss. And we've tried to simplify it even more, where we're just saying you need fats and proteins, and you should just be focusing on, for the carbohydrate sources in your diet, should be non-starchy, basically. And, make sure that you have plenty of natural oils and shortenings in your diet. Make sure that you drink water. If you include dairy in your diet, have milk, teas and coffees and things. And then, include nuts and seeds as well in your diet. Still be a little bit careful with that. Don't overdo it. But one of the other main things that we try to focus on as well is trying to encourage people to create a personal purpose as to why you want to lose weight and improve your health, because with a strong enough why, you can overcome any how. And trying to kind of give people that internal motivation to get going in terms of all of that. Now, we didn't just kind of pluck that all out of the air. We actually based it on the scientific evidence, if you can imagine. But we based it on the randomized controlled trials. And just to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page, a randomized controlled trial is where you take a group of people, say 100 people in this case. You can split them up randomly into two groups of 50, one following method A, one following method B, and then you follow those groups over the same period of time, and then see what happens at the end. That's all a randomized controlled trial is. And in the case of weight loss, when you're comparing low carbohydrate diets to low fat diets, there are 67 randomized controlled trials in the peer-reviewed scientific evidence literature. 2 of those are equal in weight loss, 58 are greater in weight loss for low carb, and 7 are greater in weight loss for low fat. However, when you dig down into those numbers even more and you look at whether it's actually statistically significant weight loss, which is kind of where you try to pin down the science even more, of those 7 where you got greater weight loss for low fat, 0 are actually statistically significant. So it's just completely chance that they happen to be a little bit more than low carb. But in regards to low carb being significantly greater than low fat, it's been 36 out of those 58 they're actually statistically significant. So when you look at those statistically significant weight losses, it's 36-0 to low carb, basically. And in whatever game that you're playing, that's a pretty substantial win for low carb for that. And you can find all of those again on our website at phcuk.org/RCTS, and download them as a table with all of the references and hand them out to anyone that kind of comes across as skeptical, and you can give them all of the scientific references that they need to understand the evidence a bit more. Then also, it's also based on, within those RCTs, you can look at the reduction of HbA1c with participants living with type 2 diabetes. And for anybody that isn't sure what HbA1c is, it's basically kind of the average of your blood glucose levels over the previous 3 months. So it's a fairly good gauge in terms of where people's blood glucose levels are for a 3-month period. Now, for low carb, 16 have a greater reduction in HbA1c in comparison to low fat, and then 2 have a greater reduction for low fat. But again, looking at the statistical significance, 11 are significant for low carb in terms of their reduction, but 0 are significant for low fat. So once again, it's 11-0 to low carb. And again, whichever game that you're playing, that's a significant win for low carb. And again, we've separated that on the website, phcuk.org/T2D. So yeah, that's all based on, our recommendations are based on the randomized controlled trial evidence. But when we look at the real world, that can sometimes be different. But what's really interesting is that it actually does play out how it does in the trials. And the guy that I'm showing here, Dr. David Unwin, who's a GP up in Southport, is an absolute pioneer and cornerstone of this movement. And he has been doing this for, I think, about 7 or 8 years now. But basically, through implementing this type of advice within his NHS GP practice, he saves about £50,000 more on drugs for diabetes alone compared to all of the other practices within his area. And if we were to extrapolate that to the 9,500 surgeries across the country, we'd be looking at saving the NHS 470 million quid per year on drugs for diabetes alone. And that doesn't even introduce the preventative costs of preventing surgeries in terms of amputations and eye operations as well. So that's a fairly conservative saving there, and it could actually end up being in the billions, because if we prevent anybody getting amputations and having eye surgery as well, then we're going to be saving a lot more as well. And once again, we're kind of showing this in the scientific literature more and more. This is a recent study of Dr. David Unwin's work at his surgery, and he's recently published his 6-year data. So if people come to you and say, well, that's great that it happens in the RCTs, but what about the long-term data? We've now got data for up to 6 years in an NHS GP practice setting as well, showing that it significantly improves people's lives. So we're basically covering all of the bases that we can with all of this, and even more so, David's done a great job of raising awareness within the healthcare professional community, and so much so that he's actually got an e-learning module through the Royal College of General Practitioners, which you can send to your healthcare professionals to do. It takes them 30 minutes and they get CPD points for it as well. So feel free to note that link down and send it to them, trying to encourage them to do it. And yeah, it's what's been amazing over the past 5 years, coming up 6 years soon, is the increase in number of healthcare professionals across the country that are connecting the dots, implementing this in their practice, and realizing how powerful this is in terms of improving people's health, reducing medication and reducing costs for the NHS, and kind of time constraints as well, alleviating that. So that's absolutely been fantastic. And part of that growth of the healthcare professionals also has seen a massive increase in our ambassadors program. Quite a few of which are here this evening, so thank you all for all that you do. We've got over 250 ambassadors, volunteer ambassadors across the country now, that are trying their best to liaise with local NHS healthcare professionals to better inform them about lifestyle interventions in regards to obesity and type 2 diabetes, and trying to help improve patient health and save the NHS a bucket load of money. And it's been fantastic to see the work that everybody's been doing, from Treflin, obviously, and also John and Lynn as well, that are on the call, and everybody else. And one in particular, most recently, Lou Walker in Winchester, has actually managed to publish the results from her groups in the same journal that David has, which is the British Medical Journal's Nutrition Prevention and Health publication, which is, you know, a very, very well established, the BMJ being a very well established, world-renowned journal, and she's published her results in that journal. So we're actually kind of demonstrating within the mainstream journals that what we're doing is seeing results, basically. So it's been fantastic, and I'm really excited about the future as this snowball gets bigger and bigger. But what we're really trying to kind of point out to those that are still skeptical is that we think that we've been using the wrong end of the hammer for a long time, probably about the past 40 years at least, in regards to dietary recommendations. And all we're saying is that if we flip the hammer around and use the actual hammerhead instead of the handle, then we're going to find things a lot easier, and we're going to be able to put the nail into the wood a lot easier. So yeah, thank you all for listening, and let me know of any questions.
Hi Sam, thanks for that. I'll start off. The sort of macro mixes, you were looking at high carbohydrate, low fat. and low carbohydrate, high fat.
Mm-hmm.
But there weren't any studies undertaken with low carbohydrate, low fat. And what we're finding is that because we know the carbohydrates are the culprit regarding putting glucose into the system, but fat is the culprit, which can interfere with the production of ketones from the body fat.
Right.
So what we've discovered, I came across it by accident, so there was no big laboratory experiments involved, and I think we can bear this out by people who are here tonight, is that by keeping your dietary fat low, in other words, cut out the avocados, the big slices of cheese, the bulletproof coffees, blah, 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 just eat a standard amount of food as you would make up a plate anyway, and just look at the carbs on it. So if you've got chips on, well, I'm not having them, I'm not having potatoes, and just replace them with low carbohydrate food, and people are just losing massive amounts of weight. So, and I was looking at a study on the lymphatic system, because the lymphatic system is obviously important for the transportation of fats through the body, especially long chain fatty acids go through the lymphatic system. But I just noticed that there's been no study. There haven't been the double negative there. There haven't been any studies carried out on low fat, low carbohydrate, and we can only share the evidence and the experience that we've got. So I'm not saying anything bad about any of the studies. It's just that our combination, which I've now called the local loafer diet, low carbohydrate, low fat diet, that hasn't been included. But that doesn't matter, because obviously we have evidence that it works. And I always say to everybody, if it doesn't work for you, then okay, find out what does work for you, because we don't all eat the same meals and we have different dietary requirements. There are some people on here tonight who are into the 70-hour fasts and are not feeling hungry. Lee Wickstead, just put your hand up, Lee, so that Sam can see you. Lee's lost over 5 stone since the 1st of December. Amazing. Harvey, down there, wave Harvey. All right.
Hello.
Harvey has gone from he's lost 18 stone in total, and
amazing.
And there's other people on here as well, so I'm not just going to pick those people out, but I just thought it was worth a mention, Sam, because
totally.
I don't know if that combination has been looked at, or whether anybody.
I believe that there are some studies out there kind of looking at that, and I think that even partially some of them are actually within that list of RCTs, where they in fact recommend perhaps a lower fat than usual, and when I say lower fat, it's still like 50%, compared to like a 70-80% type of deal. Honestly, that absolutely makes sense, what you're saying there. And there are as many low carb diets as there are people, basically, and we all need to work out what works best for us, essentially.
I think Sam,
and adapt. Yes,
Sam. Yeah, hi there. Thanks for the PowerPoint. Wow, it was very informative. I actually really enjoyed it. And I can understand though a lot of stuff, but following on from Intrepid, because I actually went to up to 275 kilos. I mean, I was a proper addict. Right. I spent most of my time thinking of food. If I wasn't thinking of food, I was eating food. If I wasn't eating food, I was driving to get food. And so actually to sit there and count, how much carbohydrate, how much thing, it's sort of beyond an addict's mind, because yours is, it actually goes much deeper. Sustenance, there's an emotional side of actually while we eat, and actually food becomes like your only friend, unfortunately it actually wants you to die eventually. I mean, the amount of food that I was eating. So what I found with the OMAD diet, when they now some essential fast, it cuts out that madness, because you don't have to keep worrying about, how much food do I eat? Do I eat in the morning? How much food do I eat in the evening? You know, and then you also use your natural body's fat adaptation. Now, if you ask Lee's just doing another. Well, I just finished off 70 hours. He's doing a 72-hour fast, and he's not even hungry. So, and literally, your hunger goes. So even though I'm an addict's nature and I want to eat, I don't have the hunger. You know, it's amazing. I think it's a whole area that needs to be explored. That the whole OMAD addict and hunger up, because it's very interesting. You know, because it works for me. I've actually lost about 120 kilos. You know, over 13 months. Yeah.
It's very true. I think Sam as well. For me, it's a lot of it. It's what you eat. Obviously, it's what you eat, but it's changing your mindset about what food is to you.
Yeah.
And if I think back now to how I used to be, I was talking today actually to someone about it. How I used to be is the fact that if I go to a restaurant and you get the menu, I'd first look to see what desserts they got. That was my first thing I used to do, to see what desserts I got before I'd even looked at starters and main courses. And not even considering that by the time I've had a starter and a main course, I'd even want a dessert. So it was that. So for me, it's the mindset of only eating when I'm hungry. So I'm now on hour 74 of a fast that was originally only going to be 48 hours. So I haven't intended this. It's just that I got to 48 hours and thought, well, I'm just not hungry.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm still not hungry. Incredible. So I will just eat when my body tells me, you're hungry now, and have something to eat. So it's that mindset change. But I think the biggest thing is, and I've bored people to death about this, but the biggest thing is giving up sugar, without doubt.
Absolutely.
Because there's many associations to sugar. So giving up sugar nutritionally will give you nothing. But in your head, it has a massive effect, because that's what drives you to want to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And again, while I was fasting, I've just read Jason Fung's book on the complete fasting, and I was just sitting there reading it and just nodding my head thinking, yeah, this is absolutely right. So I just think giving up sugar and just listening to your body rather than your watch telling you what time you should be eating are contributing factors, as well as nutrition as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a real perfect storm that we created in terms of recommending both high carb diets, but also the fact that, you should be snacking in between meals as well. And you should be eating 6 times a day. It's like, whoa, hang on a minute. What are you doing? What are you recommending? And just going off of that, in terms of, breakfast being the most important meal of the day. Obviously every single meal is important. But if you're not hungry in the morning, then it's not necessary at all.
But Sam, that saying there, obviously, that you just said of breakfast being the most important meal of the day. I don't know if you know who came out with that saying.
Not off the top of my head. No, go ahead.
Yeah, the guy's name is John Kellogg. And Kellogg being the Kellogg. Yeah, that's. So I do a presentation for new members of the group, and I put that on. That it was John Kellogg who came out with that many years ago, and I think he may have had a vested interest in that.
Maybe there's a slight conflict of interest there, just a slight one. It's incredible. Inga, you've got a thought.
Yes, one of the people that are going to suffer the most, or some of the people that are going to be suffering the most, if this becomes more popular, are the fast food industry. And they're extremely powerful. I'm still stunned by that slide where you showed who made up the people that decided on what was healthy food. Now, 2 years ago, when my husband and I started keto, we went on a 6-week holiday where we were traveling a lot. And so we were actually able to stay in keto, but we had to eat food out. And during that period, lucky for us, McDonald's, for instance, introduced a burger that was wrapped in lettuce leaves. So it had all the stuff that you normally put in a burger, but it had it all wrapped in a lettuce leaf. And that's what we ate if we happened to go to McDonald's, and we found that was not too bad as far as carb count goes. I don't know about fat count, but carb count was all right. And my main aim at that stage was to get off the insulin. So anyway, so I'm just wondering whether in your focus group, you need to have somebody looking at how you can help the fast food industry incorporate this way of eating. Because if you go to them and start giving them suggestions, you might win them over, and they may cooperate. And you don't turn them into enemies that are going to fight you tooth and nail. So that was just a thought that came to me when I was looking at your slides.
No, yeah, you can certainly attempt to try and, you know, turn what's a potential enemy into a friend by, you know, perhaps giving them a way forward as trends happen. And I mean, just, you know, going off of that, it's totally possible to eat fast food and low carb, and particularly, you know, if they're literally offering it on the menu, they can certainly adapt. I think those things are always going to be there, unfortunately, I think.
Well, it doesn't cost them anymore if you just take the bun off and put a lettuce leaf around.
100% not. No, that's right. It's a simple swap, right?
Yeah, and we've got a burger place here that specializes in, you choose your bun, and one of them is a keto low carb bun. I don't know what's in it. It's probably not terribly healthy, but anyway, it's low carb. So it is possible for them to make these changes once people are there to eat it, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's stuff that kind of we probably all know already. And it'd just be about trying to get in the boardroom, wouldn't it? And kind of say, well, guys, why don't you just have this on your menu as an option? And like, hopefully, you know, consumer behavior will lead that way. You can still earn money from it. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
You know, because consumer behavior has to lead the company, unfortunately.
For instance, deep fried chicken is very popular in Asia, but they don't stick the KFC breadcrumbs around it. So why don't they just leave that rotten stuff out, you know, and then you don't have the chicken covered in carbs? I mean, why do you need all those carbs around the chicken, you know? Exactly.
Oh, 100%. And, you know, in time, I think they're really going to start to see consumer behavior change, and they'll adapt to the trends, I'd have thought. But it'd be good to give them a helping hand along the way. And of course, there's been a big push with the plant-based burgers and things like that, which has been interesting. And it's going to be interesting to see the long-term sales on that. Yes.
Well, funny enough, they're all jumping on the bandwagon of the vegan-based stuff.
Oh yeah.
But you know, they took the lettuce leaf option off McDonald's here, so that was only for a couple of months that they had that, you know. So don't know.
I mean, there's a big vested interest in that, because you can keep a plant-based burger around for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, it has a very long shelf life, basically, and it costs them pence to make, and they sell it for a couple of quid. The profit margin on that is just huge. It's crazy.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yes. So we're up against it there, but hopefully as people see the results of this, which seemingly you all have, that you become healthier and hopefully happier because of this type of lifestyle, then, you know, you stick to it, you tell your friends and your family, and it's, you know, it just spreads like wildfire. So get out there.
Sam?
Yes.
Sam.
Yes,
another good thing about, you know, fasting in if you do it in a, you know, after a few days or whatever, is that you can afford to buy quality food, you know. And I don't actually buy any sort of just the average chicken, you know. It has to be free range or organic. Ideally, if I can do it, I'll actually buy it from a farm, you know.
Great.
But then, because I'm fasting, if I'm fasting, I'm not eating it every single day, so I can actually span that out for the whole week, which I would normally be eating, you know, an average chicken and just consume it within a couple of days. So it's about changing the people's perceptions around, you know, actually or organic to normal, and actually how you can spread that actually thing through.
Yeah. Exactly, and like your food bill dramatically decreases, right? When you implement fasting, and you're like only on like either one meal every few days, or like even just like 2 meals a day. So I just eat 2 meals a day, not ginormous meals at any stretch either. Just your food bill like plummets in comparison to what you're doing before, and even then, you know, a lot of these real food diets, you can do them really on a budget. So you know, they don't have a leg to stand on.
I just bought a free range smoked gammon. Yeah, I think it's the kilo worth. I think about a tenner. I bought some organic cabbage, and that will last me for the whole week. So literally, I'm actually eating loads of it, and it's good food, and it's whole food. But actually, you know, you don't have to eat all the pizzas and the donuts and all that. That's just a waste of calories.
100%, man. No, it sounds like you're absolutely smashing it, Harvey. So congratulations.
Oh well, see, Trekkin's a great guide to us all, you know.
Absolutely,
he's the man.
That's awesome. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, Treflin.
Okay, nobody about it. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing to do with me. It's all to do with what everybody else is doing, really, at the end of the day. You know. I believe Louis come all the way from Canada. You're late, Louis. Have you got a note?
Hello. Hi, Louis.
Hi, Louis.
Have you got a note, Louis? Come on. Why are you late? Sam's going to have to go all through it again now.
The entire thing once again.
Yeah.
Bring in Amanda.
Yeah, come in, Amanda. Yeah, how are you doing, Amanda? Sorry. Thanks, Steve, for that.
So it was at 7, right?
7, yeah.
Okay.
No worries, don't worry. Hi, Amanda.
Hiya. Yeah, Sam, thanks so much for that. And I wish I'd seen your study. You've gone, oh, there you are now. I wish I'd seen your study that you did on the 3 diets, because that, for me particularly, was fascinating. Because your very low-fat vegan diet is how I've lived for 32 years of my life.
Right, okay.
And popped up at 32 stone. And constantly got told I was lying about my food. And so it's quite... And once, I gained 20 stone in about 2 years, once I was really sick after surgery and couldn't exercise anymore. So the fact you were exercising way hardcore, more than I would have been, even though I was really a big gym goer, is really interesting to see that. And I wish that was more known, because, like I say, I'm very low fat vegan. And when I've lost 12 stone nearly now, I'm nearly at 12 stone.
Congratulations.
Well done.
It's taken a long time, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
But I'm halfway to where I need to be, which is cool.
Amazing.
You know, when you get to a certain point, you don't think there's any way back, really.
Yeah.
So I'm particularly interested in that, the low fat vegan. That's quite interesting. And also, quite shockingly, and this will shock Treflin and anybody else who's known me for a while, is that I've started eating meat, which is really quite scary.
Yeah, I bet it is.
Really?
I bet it is. It must be pretty intimidating.
Yeah, and I'm terrified. I haven't dared tell most of my friends, because most of my friends are vegan or vegetarian, and will be. So when and obviously at the moment it's easy because no one's allowed to come around. But I'll be hiding. I mean, it's very limited. I've literally been eating rare steak.
Right.
Chicken. Weirdly, rare steak doesn't taste like meat. It tastes like tofu.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
At least my memory of meat. I hadn't eaten meat since I was 16. I'm nearly 50, so it's a bit of a catch up, you know. And I don't know how on earth I cook meat. I've never cooked it in my life, so that's an easy thing. But yeah, so
have you felt a difference since you've incorporated meat back in?
Yeah, I did. I did a carnivore week last year, but that included eggs and dairy. And I've cut eggs and dairy out of my diet because I've got an autoimmune disease, and I'm trying to focus on that. So I've cut those out. So I'm doing like a low carb Dr. Terry Wall's kind of
Wall's protocol.
Yeah. So I'm taking that on board. So I have actually upped my carbs a bit, but that's taking them to about 5%. I mean, it's just
exactly. Like, whoa.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. So yeah, it's no bit, but I've allowed myself carrots.
Whoa.
It's
outlandish.
It's so sweet now. It's insane.
Yes. Yeah. You really do notice when you take
I made
that out.
myself a coleslaw, which was a staple I used to make years ago, and I made that. I was so excited because I thought I'm going to allow myself a bit of red onion and some raw carrot and red cabbage, which I still had. It tasted like I was eating a trifle or something. It was so sweet.
Wow.
It was almost like I couldn't bear it. It was so sweet, So it's crazy how much your taste changes. And I didn't really eat sugar, but I ate a lot of fruit and dates, typical vegan stuff, lots of fruits and dry fruits. But yeah, so I just want to thank you for your vegan diet approach, and it made me feel so much better.
Oh, that's cool. That's good to know. And that was really interesting because I'd never done any kind of vegetarianism or veganism, but before that, and over those 3 weeks, I kind of hate to say it, but my mental cognitive abilities definitely declined even within 3 weeks. I just felt really foggy.
Well, actually, in relation to mental health, when I started doing keto, I went from being vegan to pescatarian, which was a big leap in itself. Started eating only fish, and within 6 weeks of doing that, I came off Prozac, which I'd been on for 25 years. 25 years. I mean, that's crazy. And I didn't even ask my doctor. I mean, I know I shouldn't say this really, but I just knew, in a weird way. I thought, I don't need this. And I just stopped taking it. And there's a lot of stuff on the internet about how you should never just stop taking Prozac because you'll be suffering for the rest of your life, the side effects of coming off it. And I had no side effects. So it just goes to show how powerful it is getting the nutrition right. It's amazing.
Massively. Yeah. There definitely needs to be a lot more warnings over kind of nutritional deficiencies that kind of accompanies veganism in particular, of course, and the effect that it has on mental health. Absolutely. There are some really good books out there. I don't know if you've read The Vegetarian Myth by Leah Keith, of course. That's kind of feels like that's a bit of a tome that people need to include in their understanding of trying to transition kind of back into omnivore. I think we're up against it in terms of the current climate, in terms of how it's promoted and things. But I think as time goes by, we'll probably end up winning the long game because you just can't hide that type of kind of ill health indefinitely. Really, just too many people will just say, oh yeah, I ended up on loads of antidepressants and I needed B12 shots like every month and all of this jazz. But we're certainly up against it, and then also the environmental stuff as well, and that needs to be properly laid out for people to fully understand how that actually works. And the fact that there's no bloodless diets. Something has to die in order for everybody to eat, and even kind of with crops and things like that, potentially more animal lives are taken through kind of harvesting than through kind of eating livestock, because of course taking one cow life versus hundreds of field mice. Basically, they get chopped up and poisoned and things like that. So yeah, it's a complicated subject, and it's something that I talk to a lot of vegans in particular about. My sister dabbled in it for a time. I managed to kind of get her out of it a little bit, but obviously she still has a lot of vegan friends and things, and I try to point them in the right direction, but sometimes it feels like it's kind of a losing battle in some senses, doesn't it?
Well, to be fair, it is. I think we're going to a slightly different territory now, because I think a lot of people are becoming vegan to save the planet.
Yes.
I mean, like quite a few
right.
of my friends very small amount of my friends that were meat eaters up until last year, and then when they watched the David Attenborough documentary, they all gave up meat straight away. But they've all gone on to eating corn and Linda McCartney food, and so what they, and I kind of wish
it's literally destroying the rainforest.
Yeah,
literally.
Exactly.
Yeah, destroying themselves
as well.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I think when you look at the food industry now, vegan is like what the low fat was in the 1980s. It's the perfect processed food area to exploit. All the vegan cakes and savory things. I mean, it's just junk food in the day.
It is 100%. It's ultra processed food
that
is just not good for you, really.
No, cool.
And we've certainly got an interesting way ahead in terms of trying to show people like the intricacies of all of this, and particularly just with the kind of the carbon footprint stuff, I think is one of the most difficult things to get across. But there's a really good infographic by White Oak Pastures, which is a farm in America, and basically they did a carbon life cycle assessment. I think it's called something like that. But basically, you look at a kilo of lots of different foods to see the carbon footprint that it has. And so if you take a kilo of standard US factory farming beef, then that puts 33 kilos of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, right? And that's kind of like the factory farming stuff, like that nobody wants, whatsoever. And then you look at a plant-based burger like Beyond Burger or something like that. Then a kilo of that puts 3.5 kilos of carbon into the atmosphere, which is obviously significantly less. But then if you look at an organically raised, pasture-raised kilo of beef, like White Oak Pastures does, and a lot of the UK does, just as standard anyway, then that actually puts 3.5 kilos of carbon into the soil as well. So it's not even putting anything up. Like there's a net benefit to carbon sequestration through grass-fed beef, basically, which is about 90% of standard British beef. Anyway, so it's a complicated subject, but hopefully in time people will come around. Treflin, you're muted.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, yes, Steve, you're right.
I'm fine, thanks. Sam, when you did your 3 weeks of low carb, high volume eating, and you didn't put on the weight that would be predicted by SECO, you must have discussed it with scientists since. Has anybody come up with an explanation that seems to
work out in terms of how that actually works? It's difficult. I mean, I've had lots of discussions about it. I mean, essentially your body just will go into overdrive because it's able to. It's not in a fat storing mode whatsoever. And what was really interesting is that during that first 3 weeks, I was incredibly energetic. Even though I rigidly stuck to the same exercise regime throughout all 3 experiments, I could just feel like I was energized like the entire time. So that was really interesting. And there was one particular night during that experiment where I woke up sweating buckets. I was incredibly sweaty. Like, I don't know what had happened. Like my body just must have sweated out a load of calories that night or something, which was really interesting. And I think just your body just burns it off because you're not in a storing mode, you're in a burning mode, really. But switch that to the low fat fake food and the very low fat vegan diet there, and your body's switching into literally a storing mode. And this is all obviously also in the context of somebody that's been naturally slim, metabolically healthy all of their lives as well. So you put this into the hands of somebody that's living with type 2 diabetes, for instance, you're going to get a very different result. It's don't try this at home, folks, type of thing. Definitely. But I think just my body was in a pure burning mode 24/7, I think.
If I'm just coming out on something here, then the one thing which this is just me, so is a subject of calories, because it's a number that's assigned to an experiment, a laboratory experiment, and there's nothing to do with the way our food is metabolized in our body. And if we said, okay, I will produce a meal plan this week, let's say for 50,000 calories, and you produced the meal plan, and then we looked at it in terms of nutritional value, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, they would be totally different. So because we've taken that stupid calorific number that was assigned as a result of an experiment in the laboratory and tried to assign it to the way our body eats and uses up the food as energy. So there's no correlation between the calorie and the actual macros. So therefore, your experiment could be replicated and come up with a totally different result because somebody else chose, forget calories, chose different food groups to make up those. So if I could make up a meal consisting of total carbohydrates to make up those calorific numbers, and somebody else could choose low carbohydrate foods to make up those calories and have a totally different result.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way that I try to sum it up is basically that biochemistry leads, physics follows. We're not breaking the rules of physics. that always still applies. But when it comes to biochemistry, biochemistry leads and physics follows. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for answering that for me.
Yeah, what happens if you eat high carbs? Like you're always hungry, so you end up eating a lot more.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, exactly. So once again, it's almost like biochemistry is leading you to eat more and more, and the physics will sort it out, of course. That's absolutely what happens, definitely.
I've lost you there, Sam. We can't see it, but never mind.
Oh, don't know. Am I back? Hang on.
No, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you. We just can't see you. That's
Yeah.
Just can't see me for some reason. Yeah, I think my computer's frozen a little bit. It's overloaded for some reason.
We've got.
You might catch up in a moment, but as long as you can hear me, that's all good.
We've got Valdemar here from Iceland. Hi, Valdemar. You all right? Can you hear me, Valdemar? No, it's not hearing me. Oh well.
I think he's on mute, isn't he? He is on mute. He's speaking.
Hi. I can hear you now.
Hi, Valdemar. How are you doing? Are there any questions that you want to ask that particular?
No. Actually, it's good to listen, and it is very educated.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
Steve, you've joined us for the first time tonight, Steve. Steve Yates, haven't you?
Yes, first time for me.
So where are you from, Steve?
So I'm from Neath in South Wales.
Oh yeah.
I did catch up earlier today. It's incredible listening to some of the stories and what people are achieving. It's quite eye opening. I did manage to catch up with another local PHC member in Llanelli this afternoon. So I had a fairly long conversation with that lady as well, Jo Isaac. Quite a story to tell. She'd lost, I think it was 15 stone. Quite interesting listening to her story as well about veganism. She'd gone on to a vegan diet. I think she'd gone on to a vegan diet and lost most of her hair. Her hair fell out. But anyway, she like many of you listening tonight, she found low carb and come across keto, and it really worked for her. And the weight has just fallen off. But, yeah, she had quite an incredible story. I certainly haven't got one of those wow stories like you guys have. But, I've always had whether it's an addiction or not, I've always had an extremely sweet tooth, and it's something that I've always eaten a lot of through my life. I've always been very active and fairly active sportsman, played lots of sports, but I knew how to tackle my liking of sugar, and I came across, I went vegan for a while. I was chatting to Sam earlier this week, and I actually went vegan for not very long. I don't know, it was about 4 or 5 months, I guess, and didn't feel great on it at all. And then I came across the Michael Mosley diet, the 5-2 diet, tried that. That's it. That was good. I didn't lack any energy. I was playing a lot of competitive squash at the time, and I was able to play squash on the days I was only eating 500 calories. So that got me thinking more, and started looking more down the low carb, and then came across the keto lifestyle, and I sort of adopted that back in October 2018. So it'll be 3 years this year that I've been eating that way. And it wasn't a weight thing for me. It was more of an all-round health thing, really, thinking about things like Alzheimer's disease and metabolic syndrome. And you've obviously got trophy, so you've got people maybe like me, might be on the outside but fat on the inside, and read all the books and absorbed everything that I could podcast wise. And yeah, it's been quite an eye-opener, really. And some of the success stories that you hear that people have is quite incredible. I certainly never go back to eating the way that I used to. I own, similar to Sam, I just eat meals a day now. About 12, 1 o'clock, and then lunch, evening tea then is 6 or 7 o'clock. So I eat within a 7 or an 8 hour window, and yeah, I feel just great on it. I did lose a stone, so I certainly wasn't big to start with. I was only about 10 stone 7, and I'm now down to 9 stone 7. So I'd lost a stone and probably back to the weight I was when I was 18. Tons of energy, never ever feel hungry in the morning. It's very interesting listening. I've forgotten the name now, but the gentleman, I think, said he'd lost 5 stone, has been on a 72-hour fast. I've done a few.
That was Lee Wickstead.
Yeah, that's right.
Lee, that was it. Yes, Lee.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. It's certainly a fascinating world, and it's just amazing to me how ignorant the mainstream medical are of this type of thing. I was very interested in listening, traveling to the podcast you've done this morning with Joanna McCormack.
John McCormack, Dr. Joe.
Yes, that was very, very interesting, and how you can approach as a patient, how you can approach your GPs to suggest that you're going to go low carb, because I guess there's still a lot of resistance from many GPs, and that's purely through lack of knowledge, I guess. And I've listened to a few people say that they don't generally blame the GPs. GPs are GPs at the end of the day, and they're only guided, I guess. They haven't got time to read all the studies and all the papers. But on the flip side of that, there is a responsibility for GPs. I think if this is put in front of them, then there is a genuine responsibility to them to look at the evidence, and which is significant. Sam already pointed out the RCTs that have been done and are published, and David Unwin and Ian Lake and the rest. So it's incredible. But no, I'm privileged to come on this evening and listen to what everybody's had to say, and people's success stories blow me away. It's fantastic. I haven't got that story, as I said. Mine's a slightly different journey, but I have packed in the sugar, so that's a good thing for me.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I think it is all about. So if I talk about, because people, friends and family and stuff are saying, well, how have you done it, Lee? What are you doing? And when I tell them, it is largely restricting all the things which are really nice. So basically, that's what I say. I've cut out everything which is very tasty and very enjoyable. But the downside is that I've enjoyed the tasty and nice and enjoyable stuff for many, many years, and it doesn't do me any favors in terms of weight, and it doesn't do lots of people any favor in terms of weight. So there's a choice: I either carry on or I do something about it. And the fasting, you know, talking about people fasting today, they think I come from another planet because I'm not governed by my watch anymore now as to when I eat. No. And I say, you haven't eaten for 74 hours. You must be starving. Well, I would have eaten if I was starving. And that's the thing. And it's because we're conditioned to eat when, as you said earlier, Sam, you know, the most important meal of the day apparently is breakfast. So you've got to get up and you've got to eat without even thinking I'm hungry. Then you get to lunchtime and it's 1, 2 o'clock, or it's 12, 1 o'clock. So we've got to have our lunch. And then you get to the evening meal, you've got to have your evening meal without considering whether you're hungry or not. And that's what I do now. So, and then the other thing is you have your big plate of food, which I haven't got right because I still do put too much food on my plate. The only difference being now is that I don't eat it all. So the problem I've got is I'm cooking food, but throwing it in the bin, which is a wrong thing to do. I need to get my portion size right, but I eat slower. And then when I've realized I've had enough, that's it. I'm not bothered about the fact that the plate doesn't get empty. I chuck it away and job done. But I think it's a very long, it's the long game because we're having to, you're going to have to keep on talking to people to change their perceptions, which they have had for many, many years. And that's, and then when there's only a small group of people who have lost a lot of money on a low carbohydrate or low fat sort of diet, you're telling a lot of people, the majority, that what you're doing is wrong. And that's the difficulty that you've got, changing perception.
Yeah. I don't want to hog the camera time tonight, but I did need to give a quick hats off to Harvey as well, because I already spoke to somebody earlier today that I thought that's not going to be beating somebody that's lost 15 stone, and Harvey's gone and topped it in the same day with 18 stone. So Harvey, fantastic, mate. It's absolutely incredible. What an achievement.
Thank you. But you know, I actually feel like what's the word? Not a hoax, imposter. It actually wasn't that hard. I was just thinking because I'm in AA as well, and AA they say, you know, do the 12 steps, and you can actually find a spiritual awakening. And normally, if you do the steps, it'll actually take away your desire to eat. But that's like a long, drawn-out process. Whereas this is very simple. You actually go into already a natural state of keto, where you don't feel hungry. You're actually full of energy, and it's actually built-inness. You know, you don't have to work on the steps because it's already there. It's part of our system. You know, and it's such a shame that people are not using it because it's free and it's easy. So, you know, that's what I want to champion. Really, that it's all inside of ourselves.
Yeah. I would like to disagree with one thing that you said, Lee. You said you've given up everything that's enjoyable.
Well, yeah. What
I think you meant was that you're now discovering other things that are enjoyable.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. What I claim now is that there are so many things that we enjoy. We can't fit them all into our regular menu.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've got to go months between eating some of our favourite foods because there's so many things that we now realise we enjoy more than the things that we used to enjoy.
I do enjoy the food that I eat more. So now, rather than just I'm going to have this and you just eat it and then you're off to your next thing, because it doesn't matter, because in 2 or 3 hours time there's going to be something else to eat as well. So you don't enjoy what you're actually eating, and taking the time to cook what I'm eating, taking the time to cook, not just banging the microwave and warm it up, actually cooking the food as well makes me enjoy that a little bit more as well. So whereas I do eat a lot less and a lot less, not as frequent, I enjoy what I do eat now. So yeah, I get your points, but yeah.
That's why I think the Caldazes cookbooks are so good. They've got really delicious foods in them, and they've got quite a lot of science in them from David Unwin.
Yes. Their new one is out today, by the way. No, yesterday. You can get it from the works for £8.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's postage. So I'm awaiting mine. It's probably going to come either tomorrow or Monday. I've ordered mine.
Oh,
I've got all of theirs, but they are very good.
What's it
Regarding your plate sizes, Lee, as you know, we've been doing this now for so long. Plates, the sizes of the portions just come naturally. I no longer cook large portions like I used to, because I look at it and think that's too much, and I take it out and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I've got to get to that.
It will come. You've only been doing it. Was it 5 months, 4 months, 5 months?
5 months I've been doing this now. Yeah.
Well, we've been doing it over 8 years. So if I don't know portion sizes by now,
yeah.
It does come, and it'll just gradually sneak in, and you'll find you throwing less and less food away.
Yeah.
I don't throw any food away, not any. Well, very rarely.
Yeah, it's just knowing when to stop. That's I'm pleased I've got to that, because now I know when to stop. That's the
right.
thing.
Yes.
Rather than
I
before.
found that took me a while to adapt, because for some reason the message from my stomach to my brain that I was full wasn't really getting through quickly enough, and it took time for me to get out of the habit of emptying the plate, just like you found. But now, if for example, if we have a steak, we buy one steak and we have half each. Yeah. Because I can't eat a whole sirloin steak anymore.
And I was never able to eat a whole sirloin steak anyway, so I always left bits.
Yeah.
So now we have one between the two of us, and that's more than enough.
I think this idea, like I'm 70 and I'm still finding it hard to leave stuff on my plate. And I think it's the brainwashing about the starving kids in Africa. And I was just thinking how ridiculous that is, because I should eat half and send the other money that I spared to the starving kids in Africa. But my parents were just hammering it in that you had to clean your plate up, you know, and I just still can't get over it. And I'm 70 now. So this is terrible brainwashing.
Well, I think we all had it in here. We definitely all had it. Well, we are both well over 70. And I certainly remember my mother saying, if you don't eat that, you know, what about the poor starving children in Africa? My mother certainly used to say that to me.
Well, I've got a very distant memory of when I was a very young child of a food parcel from Australia. You know, because this was something that started during the war or post-war, I think. And there were still food parcels coming from Australia because of shortages of food in the UK.
I can hear something going on in the background there, but I don't know.
I don't know what it is.
Not us.
It's not us. We've got no kids here.
I've just muted Louis, so I don't know whether it's Louis or not. It's not. Sam's coming back in. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, guys, I actually have to go, but I'll see you on the Monday meeting evening.
Cheers, Harvey.
Hey, Harvey.
Cheers, guys.
Catch you over the weekend.
Cheers, buddy.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Welcome back, Sam.
Sorry about that. My laptop decided just to completely pack in, so I'm on the iPad. But yeah, I was just going to say that I'm going to have to call it a night for me. I need to go catch up on date night. But yeah, I mean, thank you all for listening to my mad ramblings, and I hope you found it useful.
Absolutely, Sam. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Well worth it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam, for joining us, and thanks everybody. Okay, I know it's late on a Friday. We're back again. As you can see, we've got our Monday meetings, and so we have the Monday meeting at 4 o'clock, and then we have a Wednesday morning meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning. There you go. And you know, if you get up for the 7 o'clock meeting, you'll see me in the dressing gown, maybe if you're lucky. And I hope that Inga will be there, and we'll get more people from the Antipodeans to come and join us. But I just want to thank you all for coming along, and hope we can do it again. And don't forget, you know, keep posting, sharing your meals. Let us know how you're getting on, and if anybody's got any questions at any one time, then you can just post them on the Keep Back Club. And just
are you going to post a talk on online, or?
Is that what you want us to do?
Well, because I missed it, so.
Of course I will. Yeah, I'm recording it up in the cloud, so I'll send you the link for it, Louis. Okay, that's what I'll do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You look after yourself over there in Canada. Has all the snow gone yet?
Yeah, most of it is. We're getting warm days. Today's the last cold day, so we're having springtime starting tomorrow.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, that's good. All right.
But then Monday I'm moving to the Arctic, so no spring for me.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'll be traveling, so I won't attend the meeting. I'll be traveling.
Well, you look after yourself over there, and don't eat any yellow snow, whatever you do. All right.
I'll see you later, everybody. Thanks a lot, Sam. Thanks very much for your time.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.